The United States has an incredibly serious incarceration problem. More than 2 million people are currently in prison, making up 25% of the prison's population in the world. A huge contribution factor of this issue is poverty. Low-income communities are more often subject to imprisonment, and they are unable to pay bail. They're held in detainment before they're even found guilty. In fact, the amount of people in jail who are awaiting trial, presumed innocent, is more than double the entire federal prison population.
According to the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Written in 1791 as a part of the Bill of Rights, its original goal was to deliver equal treatment of the law to the people of America, regardless of socioeconomic status. Though it was written with the intention of prioritizing freedom for everyone, the criminal justice system is still deeply flawed and inherently biased against low-income and minority communities. The prison system in the United States creates and fuels a cycle that empowers the rich and harms the impoverished.
One important factor in the incarceration problem is the bail system. A bail is an amount of money that someone charged with an offense must pay to get out of jail, decided by a judge based on the severity of the offense and the person's likelihood of committing a crime again in the future. The bail system originated in Anglo-Saxon England as a means of peacefully settling disagreements. After the Industrial Revolution, England passed the Bail Act in 1898 to avoid unnecessary detainment of people who couldn't afford bail, while still ensuring that people showed up to their court appearances and discouraging crime. In the United States, however, bond companies were set up to profit off of the incarceration instead of ending detainment and excessively long sentences based on the wealth. Bail bond companies pay off debt for inmates but demand 20 to 30% non-refundable fees on top. This perpetuates a cycle of poverty, and it makes it even more difficult for poor inmates and their communities to avoid being incarcerated. And if the defendant fails to pay back the bondsman can take matters into their own hands and take personal belongings as a way of payment.
Though bondsmen help defendants stay out of prison as they await trial, it is a very lucrative industry since they make $14 billion in just 1 year. Looking into the prison population, the majority are in jail because they are too poor to pay for their bail and are forced to wait as their case is investigated. Oftentimes, the investigation can take months, forcing those in poverty to serve jail time even if they are innocent. A statistic taken from the Prison Policy Initiative shows that the average bail amount is $10,000. When contrasted to the annual income ranging from $15,000 to $39,000, it is clear that paying for bail is very difficult for many in the U.S. This contradicts the 8th Amendment, which states that excessive bail shall not be required.
Approximately 2 million people are incarcerated in state and local prisons rather than federal prisons. This is a drastic majority of the entire prison population. Within its population, more than 450,000 are in pretrial detention. Pretrial detention is the detainment of an accused criminal before any trial has taken place or a formal conviction has occurred. One of the most frequent causes for this is the inability to pay bail, an issue that's obviously more prevalent for low-income individuals. The issue of excessive bail was contested in 1951 Supreme Court case Stack v. Boyle. In it, communist petitioners were arrested and charged with conspiring to violate the Smith Act. However, before their trial, they were detained and charged $50,000 in bail, roughly $500,000 now. An excerpt spoken on behalf of the defendant stated,
"This traditional right to freedom before conviction permits the unhampered preparation of a defense and serves to prevent the infliction of punishment prior to conviction. Unless this right to bail before trial is preserved, the presumption of innocence, secured only after centuries of struggle, would lose its meaning."
This statement accurately captures the difficulties of finding a competent lawyer, compiling an effective court defense, and avoiding incarceration for people living in poverty.
Oftentimes, the inability to pay for bail leads many detained people to find bondsmen, or in many cases prematurely plead guilty in order to speed the process of court and avoid paying large sums of money. Despite being innocent, many fall into the trap set and become one of the thousands in jail without having committed a real crime. Because the most affected people are those with low income, this largely affects minority groups, since there is a significant disparity in their income compared to that of the white population. In addition, due to the subconscious or conscious bias, minority groups are charged more for bail as they are expected to commit future crimes. Research finds that African Americans are more likely to be charged higher bail amounts and 25% more likely to be held in pretrial detention. Low-income and impoverished minority communities must navigate the intersection of racism and classism in a system that works against them consistently.
There are moments when you just think about all the things that you've lost and probably will never recover, and it does make you angry. The system failed me so miserably, but sooner or later you have to put it in perspective and move on, or else it's going to destroy you. I've had 39 years of depression, anxiety, anger, bitterness, loneliness. I don't want to live like that.
Even if the accused pleads guilty, they will almost certainly struggle with the numerous fees charged to them by prisons. Often, they are expected to pay for telephone calls, clothes, personal care items, transportation, medical expenses, and even security. These costs are beneficial to large corporations like food production or phone companies who are responsible for providing these services to the prisons. Phone calls alone cost each prisoner as much as $17 for a 15-minute conversation in most Western states, as shown in this image from the Prison Policy Initiative. Bail alone is very expensive and then does not guarantee that people won't face charges. If an inmate is found guilty of a crime, they will then have to face more fees while in prison. Criminal justice courts continue to exploit those in hard economic conditions and heavily rely on a poverty cycle that benefits the rich and harms the lower class.
One of the most famous cases was that of Khalif Browder, who was a victim of the bail system. In 2010, Khalif Browder was arrested and accused of stealing a backpack. He was then asked to pay $3,000 for bail, and because he could not afford it, he had to wait in pretrial detention at Rikers Island, often in solitary confinement, for 3 years. His trial never occurred. 3 years later, the court decided to drop his charges and he was let go. Despite his newfound freedom, he was haunted by the accusations, and in 2014, he committed suicide due to the physiological damage that he suffered while in prison. Browder's case became a symbol and sparked a debate over the efficiency of the bail system and how it primarily targeted impoverished groups. Though the Browder case was important to talk about as it drew attention to the bail system, it wasn't unique. Many times, men and women aren't able to pay for their bail and are forced to wait in prison without taking into consideration if they are innocent or not. Multiple cases have been shared throughout the country of innocent people in jail taking their lives in order to escape the unfair treatment of the law.
Since the bail system is a large part of the foundation of our criminal justice system, it's difficult to extract it and rebuild a more fair system. However, some states and counties are attempting to accomplish reform operations to minimize or eliminate the financial side of incarceration. For example, Yakima County in Washington had one of the highest pre-trial detention rates in the state. An assessment of newly charged people in the county jail led to a 20% increase in pre-trial releases with no harm to the public safety status.
Not only does pretrial reform benefit the incarcerated population, it has economic advantages for courts, prisons, and the government as well. Pretrial supervision, an alternative to pretrial detention, allows the accused person to not be detained, but instead to attend weekly contacts with a supervision officer, drug tests, attendance at rehabilitation classes, or other requirements recommended by the court. As illustrated here, reforming the legal system to focus on supervision over preemptive detainment would be beneficial to both parties involved.
bail system not only makes it hard for the accused to avoid prison time, but it makes their lives spiral out of control as they are required by law to attend all their court dates, which then causes them to miss time from work, cutting their paycheck short, and making it even more difficult to pay the bail assigned by the judge.
Cash bail there basically penalize you, not just if you were poor, but if you were working class, or even some homes that had two incomes. But if you were arrested, it could even be for an old unpaid traffic ticket or a small nonviolent violation. If your bail is $1,000 or $5,000 and the criminal justice system is backed up, sometimes with thousands and thousands of cases on delay, you could end up being in jail for weeks or months, or in some cases even years, just because your family was having to make the horrible decision between paying rent money or paying your bail.
The bail system criminalizes the poor for simply not being able to pay the large money bails that are forced onto them, and although the bail system never intended to cause unfair treatment to the poor, it is important to recognize how little is being done to fix it and the heavy repercussions that have occurred from it. The criminal justice system makes it clear that the less money you have, the higher chances of you being sent to prison. Even though money bail began as an incentive and encouragement for proper behavior of the defendant, it has evolved as a method to punish and take away the rights of many when in jail. The United States has an enormous economy and should address the problems that have been born from the bail system, instead of feeding into the unjust cycle that only damages communities with low income and minority groups. In order to fix the damage caused, the bail system should be removed and revised in order to establish a more equal and fair process for all.